Alright, our presentation today is on why the minimum wage should be raised. I'm Thomas Saeed.
I'm Irene Janakis.
I'm Rocky Roy.
I'm Colton Ross.
I'm Jason Bell.
Alright, and we're here to tell you why minimum wage should be raised. First, by a show of hands, how many of you have worked a minimum wage job? So have I. Alright? How many of you, while working that minimum wage job, believe that you should have been paid more? Me too, because I've worked about 4 minimum wage jobs in the past, and each of them I was doing tons of work, and I didn't feel like I was getting paid enough for it. Next slide. All around the world, people are protesting about how hard work deserves fair pay, like you see on the slide, and we believe the same. Do you guys know anyone that struggles to pay bills and healthcare, gas, electric, because they're working a minimum wage job? Well, what we're trying to say is that minimum wage is not enough to live off of.
A full-time employee that is making $7.25 an hour only makes $15,080 a year. It is extremely hard to have a family, pay for rent and expenses when you make this little much money a year, and have no time off. We need to raise the minimum wage to earn the appropriate amount of money that we need and deserve. About 50 million Americans live below the poverty line, and 47 million of them receive food stamps. This shows you that people aren't making enough money to be able to get the adequate amount of food that they need. 44 million people are not insured, and as you can see on the image, that children also aren't insured, which makes it extremely hard for them to get the shots and checkups that they need. So could you imagine not being able to get the checkups that you need because your family can't afford it? Nickel and Dime is a book written by Erin Wright, and it is an incredible story that shows you what it's truly like to live a life working as a low-wage worker. She had the idea that someone ought to do the old-fashioned kind of journalism, go out there and try it themselves. Of course, she meant a younger journalist, but LaFemme, an editor, thought that she would be perfect for it. So she decided to travel to Key West, Florida, Portland, Maine, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. She started off in Key West, Florida, looking for a job that paid $7 an hour. She was looking for an apartment that was about $500 to $600 tops that was in her budget. The only place that she could afford would be a trailer 15 minutes away with no AC, no fan, no TV, nothing. And that was $675 a month, which was way over her budget. Or to do a horrible commute of 45 minutes to an hour and live in a cabin. She found a job as a waitress in a diner-style restaurant, but soon enough she realized that it wasn't enough to support her and pay for her next bill of rent. So she had to pick up another job as a hotel maid, but the 2 jobs became too physically demanding for her to continue, and she vacates the maid position after just 1 day. The waitress position becomes increasingly difficult as well, and Barbara leaves the job before the month has even been completed. Then she headed to Portland, Maine, and found a job as a residential housekeeping service and a job as a dietary aide in a nursing home. She ended up working 7 days a week, and the housekeeping job provided to be physically demanding, low-paying, and also degrading. She soon heads to Minneapolis and quickly gets hired by Walmart as a soft lines worker, which is pretty much putting clothes back on the racks. She finds a hotel to live in, but is worried because her doors are boltless. She decided to move to a nicer hotel, and she finds her work at Walmart to be repetitive and monotonous. It begins to believe that the employees are working too hard for the wages they are given. All of her locations show how hard it truly is to live off a minimum wage, and no matter how hard you work or where you live, it is impossible to afford.
Alright, in order to make a change, we must take a stand. Due to the current inflation, minimum wage should be $10.86. So we kind of created a 3-step plan to raise the minimum wage, and the first step is to gain the attention of the nation. This is usually done by protesting and striking against companies, and just providing
No, this is
Uh, Alright, providing genuine struggles in the nation. The second step is to gain support of the nation. This is generally done by gaining powerful figures on your side. 80% of Americans are in support of raising the federal minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. This is a quote by President Barack Obama, who is one of the major supporters of raising the minimum wage. The final step is to take action. Voting is the only way to take action in our nation. So,
this graph here shows over the current time period and a few years ago, the increases in any household goods such as your rent, your gas, your electricity. It shows an increase in every single one of the areas where there's no increase in pay. So it's harder to make ends meet because you have more costs, you have the same income coming in. This graph here shows one of the common misconceptions. A lot of people think that most minimum wage workers are teenagers, their first job, to just doing something to maybe save up for a first car or something to save up for. This graph shows that 22% of people that have worked minimum wage jobs are under the age of 20 years old, which makes the rest of the workers, 78% of the minimum wage workers are over the age of 20. So the majority of those are people that possibly have families or are trying to make it on their own through rent or have bills to pay. This here shows in reality what it would cost and how many hours you'd have to work in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment or house or anything like that to rent at a market wage. A lot of the darker areas are much higher. You have to work almost 100 hours a week in order to afford that, which isn't possible. It's also illegal in some states where you just can't work that much. Normal work week is going to be 40 hours and then you can work 5 hours a week. This video that we have here shows what it will take.
You think the laptop can handle it?
Because everyone wants to see the transition.
Should let it play out so that we get the sound. Alright, we could like skip it and just say plus 2 minutes, you know?
Because we make the transition getting back into the he has to say something about the
Based on data from one state, Ohio, as many as 15% of Walmart employees use food stamps. That's about 40 employees per store who are so low they qualify for food stamps. Last year, the U.S. distributed $76 billion in food stamps. Walmart says it takes in 18% of all those food stamp dollars. That's about $13 billion a year. If Ohio is representative, Walmart employees receive somewhere around $300 million a year in food stamp benefits, ultimately spending those dollars in like Walmart. So let's say that single mom who cashiers at Walmart also shops there. She earns food stamps from the government and turns around and spends them at Walmart. So what would it take to push someone like the single mom up to a point where she no longer qualifies for food stamps? Let's say she works a typical amount of hours for a retail job. Walmart would have to raise her wage to just below $13.63 an hour. Doing this for all of its employees would cost the company $4.8 billion each year. If Walmart wanted to pass those costs on to the consumer, they'd have to raise their prices by about 1.4%. For example, that means that box of great value mac and cheese would jump from 68 cents to 69 cents. That's 1 penny per box of mac and cheese to save U.S. taxpayers $300 million.
Just raise the prices. What? If that's true, then why don't we just raise the prices by like 1 penny?
So this just proves the argument that some people that oppose raising minimum wage just because it's going to cost companies a lot more money, that they don't really have to raise their costs that much if they want to still break even to whatever they were making before. This is just a real world example of how easy it would be in order to raise the minimum wage, and it would also help out the town tax money wouldn't cost you as much because you're not paying as much for food stamps.
going off what the video just said, using Walmart as an example, we can find out how they got their prices by finding the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index of that year. And to find that, we have this equation right here, which I'll bring up on the board. Probably should show them. And after you find the CPI, you find inflation by calculating the percent change in CPI based on the year you started with and the year that you want to find the difference in. And so, using 1982 as our base here, meaning that $1 is actually worth $1, we found that going in 30-year increments starting in 1922, the dollar was only worth 16% that it is in 1982, 26.5% in 1952. Like I said, 100% in 1982, and then inflation increased the dollar 230%, meaning that $1, if you went to the Walmart and bought a Snickers bar for $1 in 1982, it now costs you $2.30. So, also using the inflation formula, I found that with the minimum wage, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. In 1922, it would be $101, and that $1 equaled almost $14 in 1922. Minimum wage would be $64.23 in 1952, equating to $1 equals $8.86. Minimum wage would be $17.64 in 1982, with $1 equivalent to $2.43. And in 2012, minimum wage should have been $7.41. Now, with those numbers, I also found an article, which I'll cite in the real video, that said in 1968 was the only year that minimum wage was increased with the inflation rate calculated in it. And it went from $1.40 to $1.60. And the article has said that accounting for the standard of living, that in today's dollars, $1.60 in 1968 would be $21.16, and that's what the minimum wage should be. But if we calculate the minimum wage using the CPI and the inflation rate, the real minimum wage should be $10.86 in 2014. Now, with those numbers, we found that the most effective way to raise awareness would be to protest, which have been done in cities like Chicago and LA. And you would have to vote on your state ballot to get the bill changed. And then to get the bill changed, obviously you have to vote. And that's our third step in our action plan. And that's how you would raise the minimum wage for your state.
This is our works cited page.